Well, good afternoon. Today I'm working on bending a guitar side, the long narrow strip that goes around the perimeter of the guitar, and here I'm adjusting the silicone heating blanket, which you can see just at the bottom of the frame. It's red. It's about the same size as the guitar side. I heat this guitar side up to about 300 degrees to bend it, and first I'll put some water on it, soak it down good, and when the silicone heating blanket heats up, and it'll cause this water to steam, and we'll be effectively steam bending this piece of wood. So wrap it up in foil to keep the moisture in, tape it to a flexible metal slat, a steel slat. Put some gloves on to grab this super hot heating blanket, put it on, put another steel slat on, clamp it all together into one sandwich. And while that warms up, and while that heating blanket is forcing that steam into the wood so it will bend easier, we'll get the bending jig ready. And this is a bending jig that I explained in the last video. This is the outside mold. We'll put this whole sandwich with the guitar side and the heating blanket on here. And the first thing I'll do is clamp it at this high spot on the lower bout, so that when I force this into the waist bend and around the curves, it won't pull it out of place. So we get a clamping block in there and just sock it down tight right here. Now I can work on bending the first spot, which will be the waist bend. It's the narrowest bend. And I'll use this big block of wood because these metal slats are very hot. As I said, about 300 degrees to bend this side. The slats aren't 300 degrees, but the heating blanket inside is, and the slats are over 100 degrees, which is a little hot for bare hands. That's why I'm wearing gloves. When I sense that it's ready to bend all the way, I'll switch out for this clamping caul, which is a 1 1/8 inch dowel that I cut flat on one side, and the rounded bottom part will push down into this waist bend very tightly. The flat top is for the clamps to fit on and hold it down without anything rolling out of the way. I think if I were to do this again, I would probably make this clamping caul a little bit bigger around. I think I would use a diameter of about 2.5 inches instead of this 1 1/8 inch. This one pushes down very tightly into the very peak of that waist bend, but I think it would be good if it was a little bigger around and it would exert pressure over a wider area of the guitar side. It's a little fiddly to get this all set up without things rolling out of place, without the clamps falling over, so I might add a couple of guide blocks to my jig here to help hold the clamps in place for next time. I actually could have bought a tool to do all this, a bending jig, had I been willing to spend $500 or $600 on it, but I decided to invest about 40 or 50 bucks in some MDF and plywood and make my own with wood clamps and bungee cords. And this waist bend, I sensed that it was ready to bend, so it's pliable and it's bending without cracking, but you do have to go pretty slow. If you go too fast, you'll just crack it. And so just a bit of a process, takes a little patience, just work it down a little bit at a time. If I had one clamp that went all the way across instead of two from each side, it would make things a little easier. I may have to think about some way to do that. And it looks like I've got the waist kind of wedged in there good, and it's now good and tight. I'll turn my attention now to the pulling the guitar side around that lower bout. That's a pretty large diameter, so we'll do that one first. And I'll use a wooden clamping block and hold it in place with a bungee cord. It's a pretty high-tech operation here at Springcliff Studio. And now I'll work on the upper bout, which is a tighter curve. It takes a little bit longer, so I'll get my wooden block and just take my time, move slowly. And what you can't hear on the video that I could hear in the workshop is there's water boiling inside this foil. And so you can hear the water popping and boiling, and you can hear the wood crackling a little bit as it absorbs that steam, swells a little bit. And this is full speed here. I haven't sped anything up or slowed anything down, so this is the actual speed, and it just, I said it takes time. It doesn't take an hour. It takes a few minutes, but you can't just slam it down there. You do have to bend it gradually. Otherwise, the wood will crack. And at this point, I'm getting pretty much past the curved part to the straight section at the end. And so I'll just get my bungee cord ready to hold everything down. And once I've got the bungee cords on and it's all clamped up, I'll leave the heat on for about 10 minutes. Then after 10 minutes, I'll turn the heat off, but I'll leave everything clamped up with the heat blanket on it. And I'll leave it clamped up overnight, and I'll come back tomorrow and pull all these clamps and bungee cords off and see what I get. Okay, so overnight, come back the next day, and I'm going to pull this clamp off the upper bout. And of course, everything's cooled off by now, so I can handle it without gloves. But as you can see from where the foil is, this end sprung back quite a bit more than I expected. That's about 3 inches of spring back, and the lower bout did the same thing. So I decided to open it up, wet it down again, rewrap it with foil, turn the heat blanket back on, get it nice and hot, and clamp it back in the clamps. And this time I left the heat on for about 20 minutes. Then I turned the heat off, left it in the clamps overnight, and I came back the next day or a couple days later, and when everything is cooled off, and pulled the clamps off. And as you can see here, from where the foil is, that side did not spring back nearly as much this time, only about an inch or so, and that's pretty. I think that's pretty okay. Lower bout was about the same. So that bend looks okay. So let's get everything uncorked and take a look at the side. Much like a Christmas present, I started unwrapping very gently, and then at some point just started ripping. It's not like I'm going to reuse this foil, so I may as well just rip it all off of here. And that's my bent guitar side. Now this is a practice side, fortunately, and what I noticed in the waste bin there was a little bit of a burn spot. But let's see how this fits with the guitar top, and there it is. And what you would be looking at here would be the inside of the guitar, and then this, of course, would be the outside. And this guitar side is way wide still. That'll get trimmed down quite a bit. It'll be much narrower, but you can see the size looks, the bend and shape, everything looks pretty good. So now I'll use this inside mold, another one which I explained on my previous video. And here I'll put this side in there and clamp it in so that it holds this shape now. And I'll use these clamping cawls, spreaders, which are held in place by means of a turnbuckle. And like I've said in previous videos, none of this is really my idea. I got all these ideas from other people, watching guitar making videos on the internet, and also a course that I subscribe to online. So I didn't think up any of these super cool ideas. These are all other people's ideas. And there you go. One guitar side bent and in its spot. Like I said, this is a practice side. I have 2 more practice sides to work on, so I'll probably make a few improvements in my process, go through the next couple practice sides, and hopefully then I'll be ready to use the real sides. Thanks for watching.